the bank.
Hello and welcome to another week of the podcast. So following our series of 6, we've done 2 weeks already. So one was on savings and debt reduction, and then we talked more about housing costs. So this week we're going to jump into transportation and how to kind of maximize that in your lifetime to have big savings. So again, with me this week, I have guests Adam and Brett to talk through some of this. So what do you guys drive?
I have a Mazda 3 2013. Got that because it gets great gas mileage. That was literally the only reason to get that car. I had an old Malibu beforehand that got, I think, 14 miles to the gallon. And my Mazda gets about 40 on the highway, so it's the only decision to make that choice.
Nice.
And I have a 2007 Honda Civic 2-door that I got when I graduated from college. Graduated from high school. So I've had that with me the entire time. I've been driving around, other than when I was driving my grandma's car around when I was in high school.
Nice. So yeah, I have a 2013 Ford Escape actually, which I got because Brett has a car good with gas mileage. So I got one that was good in snow. Kind of
there you go. Good
a little
balance.
yin-yang there. So I know for me personally, I had a loan on my car. What about you guys?
I took out a loan with my credit union. I have about $9,000 left to pay on it. I had a 6-year loan on it. However, I've been paying months in advance. I think I'm about 4 months ahead right now, and my loan's about $200.
Nice.
So it's nice.
Yeah, I think brand new mine was like $24,000. Like the fully loaded version of it is what I am getting with like the fancy GPS at the time, and this is like before even maps on your phone was a thing, right? And that ended up being like $14,000 down is what I put on it because I had money from working in high school that I was able to contribute to that, and I think so I had like basically a $10,000 loan that I paid off very quickly while I was in college. So I had it paid off within a couple of years was my strategy.
Yeah, so for me, I was going to buy a used car because I was like, I'm going to get something a little friendlier on the budget. And I took my dad with me because I was right out of college. I needed a new car. My transmission was going on my old one. And so I had about, I think, $4,000 saved up as a down payment, which, wasn't a ton, but it was pretty good. And then I had a trade-in with my old car. The dealer was still going to take it because the transmission hadn't gone yet, but it was getting to the point where I was having more and more repairs and it wasn't really worth keeping. And so my dad is like the expert negotiator. So I actually ended up getting a brand new car, the Ford Escape, for like $28,000, and the sticker price was like $35,000, and the used one I was looking at was like $26,000. So I was like, for the extra $2,000 to have a brand new one, it kind of seemed worth it.
Absolutely.
So when everything was said and done, my loan amount was for like $18,000, which I aggressively paid off in a year because I'm very debt averse. So, but looking back, I do think I could have gotten a really good, smaller used car. I think I was kind of talked into getting one better in the snow, but I look back and I'm like, well, most cars can handle the weather we get in Lansing, without...
Just going to throw out there, the Mazda 3 cannot handle the snow whatsoever. The past 2 winters that I've had it have been terrible.
Oh, really?
I never got stuck in my Malibu, even though I only got 14 miles to the gallon. This I've gotten stuck plenty of times. So there's like the opposite end. I'm actually looking to pay off my car as soon as possible so I can get a Subaru Impreza, which gets about 40 again highway, but it's also supposed to be great in snow.
Yeah.
Throw that out.
So I think there are some happy mediums there where you can get a car that's cheaper than maybe what I got with better gas mileage and still good in snow, because my car gets about 24 miles to the gallon, which is not bad for a 4-wheel drive car, but not great necessarily either. So I think there is kind of a happy medium there. But, I also think so I used to be scared that once a car hit like 100,000 miles, it was no good anymore, because growing up, my dad always got rid of cars, about the 80,000 mark. And so my cars were always lower mileage, and that's what I was used to. And so it was kind of a cool experience because I was actually driving Brett's Civic a couple weeks ago and crossed that 100,000 miles, and the car didn't just explode. It was amazing.
Well, yeah, and it's, I don't drive it a whole lot. I get to work from home a lot of the time. When I lived in Chicago, I basically parked it in my parents' garage and, held on to it because I didn't need a car when I was living there. Because what I did need, public transportation there is phenomenal. In Michigan here, public transportation is is basically non-existent, so you have to have a car here. So we've been driving it a little bit more. We drive my car in the summer. We take a lot of long road trips. It's got a lot of highway miles on it, but it's had zero problems, right, for 100,000 miles, and is showing no signs of potentially having any problems.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
it really is.
So I think that was a big thing for me to learn, though, is like, you should keep a car as long as possible. You know, he's had his for 10 years, so even though it cost $24,000 or so, you said, that's not an expense that you have to do every 4 years. So kind of growing up, you know, I was used to, my dad got a new car really often. So I was like, oh, but now I kind of look at it, I'm like, I've already had my car for 4 years and it only has 36,000 miles on it. I'd be stupid to get rid of it. It's all paid off. So that was a big lesson for me to learn, was keep a car, you know, if you can. And in your situation, you know, trade into another car. But, you know, hopefully that gap that you'll have to pay will be a lot smaller than starting over.
And see, growing up, it was funny with my parents. My mom would buy a new car probably every 2 years without fail. Not because anything was wrong with it, but just because she always felt that need to upgrade, get a new car, make it a little bit newer model, a little bit nicer. Where my dad, the whole time, he just bought his third car since I've been alive, so in 26 years. And so that just shows the huge difference between, you know, a car every 2 years versus 3 cars in 26 years.
Yeah.
So I've constantly heard more. I've listened to my dad more on the cars, so I've owned 2 cars. One I drove for 10 years and now this one.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart, you know, because I kind of look at it as that's a huge expense. Cars are really expensive.
Absolutely.
And as I've done a lot of reading, Millionaire Next Door actually is a book that talks about this a little bit. And just on different blogs, like, you realize, like, that will keep you from feeling like you're financially free to feeling like you're constantly making payments. So if you can ditch the car payment and then save up for 5 years to buy your next one and pay for it in cash, and you've kind of like freed yourself from that debt forever. Yeah,
because, you know, I can say that, you know, my car, you know, when I took it off the dealership lot, it was $24,000, right, when I bought it. Plus I spent another, you know, $1,000 to $2,000 probably in interest by the time I paid it off, and I paid it off really fast, you know, compared to how much they, you know, the rate that they wanted me to pay it off, which was like 10 years or whatever, right? 7 years for a car loan, something like that is the normal. And then, you know, I basically opted into paying thousands of dollars a year to make that car operate for the next, you know, life of the car. So, like, you know, 15 years, 20 years, hopefully, you know, if I get everything out of it, I'm spending, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 a year minimum to keep it operating. You know, miles, gas, maintenance on the car, oil changes, transmission fluid, and, you know, all the other little nuances that could or could not go wrong, and just wear and tear on the car that they just charge you for regular maintenance. So it's not just a one and done, right? When you look at that number and you think, oh yeah, every you know, 10 years I'll get a new car, and that's like being conservative, and I just have to spend like $20,000 or $18,000 to buy a new car and drive it off the lot. Unless I'm getting a big truck or something, that's like 45 to 60. Right?
80.
Right, yeah, Porsche or something, you know, something a little nicer.
Might as well get an Escalade.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, everybody, you know, we see driving around here in this area, it's got Escalades and, you know,
Range Rovers.
Right, yeah, Range Rovers and stuff. So yeah, you know, you're in the $80,000 to $100,000 range there. But it's not just that number. It's that number times, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 per year per life of the car. So you're paying almost the whole life of the car in addition to the life of the car, right?
Well, and I think something, you know, for me too is really a car is to get you from point A to point B. So who cares if it's like a Lexus or a Range Rover versus a Ford or Honda, you know? Ultimately, they all make cars that can fit your needs, whether you want better gas mileage or better in the snow. So why pay a higher premium just for a label?
Right, so it comes down to, do you need the vehicle, for one? 2, why do you need this vehicle? Is it for transportation only? Is it for like a status symbol? And based on your budget, like we did with the houses last week, we talked about mortgage or rent, how it should be roughly 30% of your income. So I think a good thing to ask would be, what do you think a car payment should be?
So it should be about 10% of your income.
Okay.
You know, obviously, if you can get that to 0%, if you can pay it off and then ride that out for a while and save money for your next car, that's ideal. So I always say to try to remember the 24-10 rule when you buy a car. So you should put 20% down, and then you shouldn't get a loan for more than 4 years, and then it should only be 10% of your take-home pay. And the reason you go with the 4 years is they have car loans now up to 10 years. But if you're a high mileage driver, let's say you put 20,000 miles on your car every year, is it really going to make it 10 years without major repairs or even physically just make it that long? So, keeping it shorter just kind of ensures that it'll get paid off before it's depreciated to nothing.
Absolutely.
So, and I know for me, so, it's not only just a car and a car payment, but it's also gas, right? So do you guys try to practice any good habits to reduce the miles that you put on your car, or combine trips, or, stop at the grocery store on your way home from work instead of making multiple trips? Do you think about that at all?
Absolutely. So it's really convenient. I work an evening job. I get out of work at 11:30. On my way home, I pass Kroger, which is open till midnight, so I got 30 minutes to get all my shopping done on my way home for all my grocery needs. Also, whenever I see my girlfriend, she lives on that same commute, so I can get her, we can have a nice evening together, and it's all one trip, so I'm not driving home, back to anywhere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I know for me, I used to live in a part of town that wasn't convenient to anywhere. So anytime I wanted to go anywhere, it's 20 minutes, grocery store, anything. And so I would really kind of be like, okay, we're going to go out to eat tonight, and then we'll get some groceries afterwards or something. And now I live a mile away from a grocery store, which is actually really convenient because I've started biking more. Mm-hmm. So I bike to work now. I try to bike to work 25% of the time, which really actually saves a lot of money. So I highly recommend trying to bike to work if you never have, if it's possible, because that's a super cheap commute, right? And so one time on my way home from work, I biked to the grocery store and picked up what I needed and biked home, and I was kind of proud of that. It's really money saving, I guess.
Right, because how much does that end up saving you on your car then? Because one, you're not paying for gas, right?
But you're also saying mileage and things.
Right, it's the wear and tear on the car. And what does the government rate that at, or what is the right number for rating that at per mile?
I think the government says about 55 cents per mile right now, right in that range. Mm-hmm. I've done some of my own analysis. I think that number is really, depending on your vehicle, obviously, but for the vehicles we have, closer to 33 to 38 cents per mile. So this year, if I bike to work, 25% in total, that's actually 600 miles that I'll be biking. So let's go with the government rate, right? So we'll just say 50 cents to make it easy. That's
$300 almost.
$300 basically that I'm
There's a whole
saving.
other car payment.
Exactly, right? Or how much gas is $300? That's it could pay for my gas for a lot of the year just by biking to work 25% of the time. So there's, if you kind of look at it that way, there's definitely some cool money savings there.
And people could argue that's healthier and stuff to bike to work. You're getting some more exercise than you normally would.
Exactly. You start eating a healthier lifestyle. You start spending less on groceries. It all just works out.
And that Starbucks may or may not be in your itinerary then.
Exactly. You're not willing to wait in
line. They won't accept me in the drive-thru line. It's just not fair.
There's a sticker on the window for people like you.
Come inside, they say.
But then you don't have to deal with the wait, because we already discussed a few weeks ago that there's 10 people in the drive-thru line, but only 2 people inside.
Exactly.
You can be one of those 2 people.
Exactly.
Be an entrepreneur.
So kind of going back to the cars then, because maybe I can't convince everybody to bike to work, even though you should try it. So what about car insurance? Do you guys look at that every year and try to negotiate a better rate, or do you just kind of pay what it is?
So when I started with my car, I got the same car insurance that my parents had on their vehicles, because when I was in high school, I was on their insurance plan. They just added me to the program. Even when I was in college, I think I was still on their insurance, right? And it wasn't until not until I got back from Chicago, when I was actually driving my car again, that I needed to get my own personal car insurance. So then I looked around a little bit more because I was in a different area. There's different rates, but that was a double-edged sword, because my parents, had worked with a company because of their generation. You find somebody that's good and you continue working with them as long as they treat you right. Well, they're not getting the best rate that they could be getting because they've never basically changed out their car insurance agency or shopped around it anyway. So therefore, I was not getting the best rate possible for my situation. And I think when I was looking around, it was like Progressive was much more inexpensive for younger people than State Farm was. State Farm is cheaper for older people driving cars. So they're all different, and you need to look at each one individually because they're radically different in pricing for what you would get.
Absolutely.
I was asking around, and I had a friend that did that analysis, right? I'm like, what are you doing? He looked at 4 or 5 different companies, and he's like, yeah, Progressive was right for me when I was in college, and and for where I live, and you can get quotes and get the numbers really easily. So definitely, that's something you need to look into.
So how much would you say you saved, even percentage-wise? Was it half? Was it...
Oh my gosh, it was probably around half. Yeah, I mean, there's such a huge swing in the pricing scheme. So and for the equivalent coverage, because you have to look at that too, right? You can't just look at, they're offering me a cheaper rate, but I'm, if I get hit by, if I hit a deer in the middle of the night, or somebody crashes into me, am I responsible for anything, right? Or what are those weird
balancing
scenarios?
the coverage versus how much you pay.
Because if I want full coverage, I want, like, if a tree branch falls on my car, and all those, like, act of God things, right? Those better be covered too, and not just, like, some of them, because there's weird disclosures, but they're saving like $200 a month because, in the fine print, they're not actually, benefiting me from that. Yeah, so you need to look at all of those options, and it's hard to do. But because they give you a quote for a price, but you really have to look at the analysis.
Well, and there's certain clauses that you might not need to activate. So, for me personally, like, there's a rental insurance clause. So if you get in an accident and then you want a rental car, they'll pay for your rental car, which is great. But through Ford, since I have a Ford, I actually got in an accident recently, and if I take it to Ford, they will give me a loaner car for free. So it's kind of like
why would I pay for it?
Right, yeah, it's doubling up. So there's certain coverage that just to look into and be like, do I really need this? For example, if your car is older and worth, $2,000, maybe you can take collision off of it because you're like, well, if it goes, like, I'm not going to get it repaired anyways. It wouldn't be worth it. So you might be paying an extra, especially in Michigan, we're a no-fault state, you might be paying an extra $30 a month for that you could kind of get back in your pocket. That's $360 a year.
Absolutely.
Which really, for a $2,000 car, might not be worth paying that every single year anymore. So there's definitely, when you're looking at car insurance, kind of ask questions. That's what the agents are there for. Make sure you know what you're getting, and make sure you know why you're paying for what you're paying for.
I think another important note is not only searching around for different car insurances. I think that's probably the most important thing you can do. But another thing you can do is, how are you paying your car insurance? Are you doing it monthly, every 6 months, or once a year? I know for me personally, if I were to pay monthly, I'd be paying about $1,300 a year, where I pay yearly, so I spend about $800. And that's a massive difference just because I set aside that money month to month and pay it all in one lump sum at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Right? So that kind of goes back to our first week where we were talking about savings and, putting stuff away for a rainy day, or in this case, planning ahead and having the delayed gratification in a sense. Now you can pay that in a lump sum instead of living life month to month on a budget, and you're like, well, I guess I'm going to have to pay more because I don't have $800 saved up, And there are definitely discounts in a lot of areas of life if you're willing to save first and pay for them in a lump sum. Even buying a car, if you can bring cash to the table, you can negotiate a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm. So really, we just all need to have your dad come negotiate a car for us.
Exactly. So he loves doing it. So call my dad, everybody. He wants to negotiate your car for you. He really does, I promise. He can just travel around the world and negotiate cars. That'll be his new job.
Right, that could be a business model, right? You're saving people so much money in that model, right? Ex car salesman.
Well, and it could be based on so they'll pay you the difference, half of the difference you saved them.
I love how you're designing your dad's future business model. He hasn't even okayed it yet.
Right, but no, like, how smart would that be? So he saved somebody $5,000 on a car, and they'll give him $2,500, right? So they still saved money, but he gets some money. Everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. All right, so with that, I think we've wrapped up our transportation discussion. So tune in next week. We're going to talk a little bit more about health insurance and medical costs in general, which are a huge cost for people. So again, subscribe to our podcast. Feel free to check our website or email us with any questions you might have. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank.